go to the should be this calculation results. Okay. Just make a calculation. A one-year simulation quite quick.
Is this on the stick?
No, this is a random Woofy assessment I've done in the past. It's just to have something.
Yeah.
And because we're looking at thermal rotation in this case, I don't think the modulus are going to be particularly high. You can see the conversion failures are 0 and the balance is perfect, so it's an acceptable candidate. I'm going to go up to so I've done my simulation of whatever I'm looking at. I go up to the camera, and I then, at that point, it's a bit funny the way you do this. You choose the camera, go to the camera first, then you click on Woofy Bio there, and then you select the location, and you can kind of see as you go across an interface how it just changes. And that, I'm going to say, well, I'm interested. I mean, there's not likely to be a mode risk here, okay? But you can see the example that you're choosing. That could be internal insulation, and this could be the substrate that you want to check. And you can see exactly where the last point is that you're happy to judge. So I'm going to left click on that, and the software opens. Now, if I had just clicked on Woofy Bio, if I'd done my simulation of my case, and I just clicked on the little graphic, the Woofy Bio graphic at the top, it would have given me a mode assessment for the entire build-up. But by opening the video file and clicking on a particular location, I'm getting the assessment for that position. And I choose okay. Slow. So class K tends to be mode conditions that affect people's health. Yes. Yeah. And class 0, 1, and 2, the limb bow, the limit of the isoplet for mode, LIM 0, 1, 2, 3. We were looking at those earlier on. So I'm going to keep this at K for the moment. And there's the climactic conditions, and there's my results. And is there a risk of mode? There isn't. And in this case, that's what I expected. But
let me say a few words. You can see over here, you can see 2 lines of water content. The red line aligns the critical water content. If the critical water content in the spore is getting too high, and then growth is possible. So if the water content in the spore rises over the critical water content, then mold will occur. Can.
Now there's a nice green arrow there, which is great. I can close that. I can go back to my video. I can choose another location and say, well, now I'm actually interested over here. Or I can open up a different case. I could have several cases on the computer, either within the same Woofy, within the same software, within the same Woofy application. I mean, you could have several applications open at the same time, but within the same application, I could choose several cases or several different locations in the same case. And when I look at those, they're going to be overlaid. So again, you can see, is there a difference? Are there issues we should be concerned about? Now we're getting red here. So in theory, this is saying this is a problem. However, this is the outside of the building, and water conditions on that wall.
You should use it outside.
Yeah, you shouldn't use it outside. I'm using it here. So obviously that area is getting wetter. It's drying out. It's doing all sorts of things. Mode conditions. The PhDs that this is based on are actually most relevant for the surface of the room, and they become less and less relevant the further you go through. Clearly on the outside of the building, you're not going to get mode because you're going to get quite a lot of dampness, but you're going to get an awful lot of heating. You're going to get a lot of different conditions that are going to prevent mold growth. But I suppose I'm just showing you those 2 different points to make the point that you can build up a layering. You could look at several different cases and say, I'm interested in the plaster behind the internal insulation. This one has this kind of membrane, that is that. This is one thickness ventilation, this is a different one, etc. And you can build up a profile of what's happening, and when you've done that, as with everything else, you could right-click it, and you can export the data as ASCII, or you could save the image, and that can be fed into a graph or a report. Any questions? So maybe, again, you can't say Woofy said no, because again, you've used this incorrectly. You've used the software. If you look at the help, if you go to function 2 or help for Woofy online, it will state very clearly the conditions within which you should be using this and what the different lamps mean and what's relevant. So I would encourage you to read that as much as possible of that, and maybe several times, the online help, because it's very good.
Maybe say something about the mode index.
There's two different there's two different approaches based on different studies.
The mode index is an index invented by it's a Finnish guy called Viitanen, and you can it's to assess, or it's only possible to assess if you have 1 year of data, but it's a kind of easier because the EVP model says you get 200 millimeters of spore growing. That's 200 millimeters, theoretically 200 millimeters, which are growing in like a petri dish. That's not that easy to catch. So I always think it's easier to analyze the mold index. Over here. So Viitanen is saying if you have no growth, you have an index of 0. If you can see some, or 1 and 2 is there is a little bit mold, but you cannot see it, so that's not interesting. And if you have 3 or updates. Company updates, great. If you have 3 or 4, you get a visual coverage, and so that's easier to assess. If then the same is, for example, 4 is 50 millimeters. That's the transferring between the two models. But I think it's easier if you have a table which is saying, grade 4, you can see a little bit. So I more like to use this Viitanen index, and you can switch the graphic in the post process. You can switch between the two indexes, or the two models. That's about the traffic light. If there's a mold growth is below 50 millimeters, it's green. If there's between 50 and 200, it's yellow, and higher than 200, or in the mold index 2, it's
So when you say mold index there, is that related to the Viitanen index?
Yes. I was wrong with my that's not 50. 50 is 50 somewhere here. So the red one is 200. Yeah, but
so that is 0.5 on the green, is it?
yes, right.
Okay. And 0.5 doesn't appear on the table, so it's less than the first one, is it?
Yeah, that's a mathematically thing to the 0.5 does not exist because the traffic light is working with the millimeters. It's, just to get an idea what mold index is that I wrote it below it.
Okay.
But that's not.
So it's quite conservative.
Yeah, it's not,
the traffic light is quite conservative.
Yeah, I never use the traffic light.
Okay.
So the traffic light one is saying it's a red light, but in the mold index that's only 2, which is acceptable.
Yeah, because no, that's not really acceptable, because with 2 you have moderate growth visible under the microscope. So there is mold on your surface, but you won't see it. So the traffic light is switching, but I say if you can see it, and the model is more on the safe side. So probably there will be nothing to see. So that's the reason why I interpret that like starting with 3 you will get a problem. The traffic light is using 2 to switch between problem and no problem.
Okay.
You can decide by
It's
yourself
slightly
what you
more-
like.
It's
what-
slightly more conservative.
Yeah. Yes. You can decide what you like to use. We usually handle it that way, that if the isoplast, or if the post process is saying there's no mold, then there is no mold. And if the post process is saying there can be mold, then we say probably there is mold. It could be happen that there could occur some mold, but maybe not. Because the model, this model is based on laboratory measurements in Petri dishes with some really nice conditions and some
Perfect growing medium.
yes, perfect on agar, perfect medium.
And no chemical inhibitors anywhere.
No. So I'm not sure if this is how right the model is. But
So Christian, are you saying that the WFI is useful for saying this is a safe construction, there won't be mold in this, and then the other option is there might be, but there's no option is there not another few options that this will probably be with this particular construction, or definitely will be with this one?
yeah, if you get on the inside surface, if you get a lot of mold showed by the display, by the processor, I would say there definitively would occur mold.
But if I'm saying I've got an old house and I'm thinking of putting this much insulation on, or this much, is your system accurate enough to say, yeah, if you push like 25 mil, you're within safety parameters?
Inside or outside?
Inside, yeah.
Yeah, inside is the problem that I told you that I wouldn't use the model on the cold side, only on the warm side. So on the other side of the so on the interior side.
Of the insulation?
Yeah, the model is thought thought to be used with the inner surface. So if you use it there with the insulation, you will get never any mold, never. You can use it behind the insulation,
yeah.
But if you use it there will only the mold occur if you have problems, if the insulation is not fixed by the right way, probably.
We presume it isn't.
And so the model will show you mold, and there will occur mold. But I think it's no big difference. Maybe it's a difference if you use 2 or 6 centimeters.
Thought so.
Probably there's a difference.
If you're retrofitting now, I'm talking about a building that surely would
but
be useful to tell you whether.
But there should be no mold in general
Behind the insulation.
the interior insulation.
How can you say that?
I'm sure it's going to be cold.
We can see it.
No, you only can see it if you remove the interior insulation.
Yeah. That's what we do.
You shouldn't do that.
We do to see if there's mold.
But if mold does occur behind,
If you have, but if you have like a EPS, something like that, and you stick it as all recommendations wanted with
Mushroom.
complete plaster on the wall, there would be no mold. In the ideal connection between you have your EPS, you have your glue, your plaster, you have your wall.
but that's if you use a standard guidance, for instance, let's say using Kingspan, it'll say you fix the Kingspan to a rail.
Five
Or even if you
5
stick it, which is increasingly common with dabs, the dabs can be 8 or 9 millimeters thick,
Mhm.
and if the skirting isn't fitted at the bottom,
Mhm.
there's no conditions in that void, like the gypsum plaster or the wallpaper.
The wall's not flat.
The wallpaper glue has been left on.
Mhm.
There's an 8 to 10 millimeter gap naturally with the dabs.
In this
You've
case-
got mold spores escaping into the room.
In this case, you will, in all cases, you will get, if you do that, you will get mold.
That's normal.
That's
That's the wrong, that's the
that's
wrong
the
way.
recommendations in
No,
the code of practice.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's the wrong way. That's-
that's a different issue.
Have there been
Can I
any-
quote you on that?
Have there been any correlative studies looking at the WUFI mold risk models and actual mold problems in buildings, where the buildings that have been identified with mold have been remodelled in WUFI to see if the risk indicator has been in the right ballpark?
I have done that with, I have done some movie 2D calculations and done that for, was on the interior side, was some gypsum boards sticked with 5 dots on the wall, and behind that, probably because of the not the moisture in the room, but the moisture in the concrete by drying out, they get around this gypsum. It was because of this spot of gypsum plaster what they used to stick it again, and the paper sucked up, and there was like a circle of mold building around these spots for gluing them on the wall, and we had laboratory tests for that from the company. There was no mold. They had tests from the reality. They had a building where they adapted that, and it was molding. You could smell it, so they removed the gypsum board. And in my calculation, I always had some problems. You can try to set the conditions so that you get mold there, but usually there will be no mold there. But it needed a long time. The first thing I did, I modeled the gypsum board as one layer, and then this gypsum spot. That didn't work because it's not getting even close to the spot. It's not getting moisturous enough. But then I had the idea that the gypsum board, it's 2 boards of paper, and in the middle filled with gypsum. And when I modeled that, I get conditions where it could mold. So
This is a 2D evaluation.
yeah, yes. But there's no official